So, this is not a formal presentation because it didn't exactly have a lot of warning, but I did want you to know it did take quite a bit of effort to get that flight canceled. And one of the things that Josh had asked me to do was, because I am a futurist, I'm not an architect, but as you probably already know, I'm rather fond of architects and those about to become architects. So I was on the board of the American Institute of Architects as one of their public directors. They always had 2 non-architects. And we get the glorious job of going, what were you thinking? And we get to stop sentences or stop conversations cold by pointing out something that nobody was thinking about. And I do want to start by saying sort of my introduction to both AIAS and AIA was right after I got on the board. I spoke at Forum in Toronto. And when Vice President Daniel McDonough was doing roll call, someone iced her. Took 2 Smirnoff ices. And of course they wanted her to chug it. She wasn't going to do that. And during my speech, I had this funny thing about one of the ways to sort of take ownership of the future is to start smoking and drinking. And everybody's laughing, and I looked over and I saw that one of those Smirnoff ices was unopened. I walked over, I opened it up, and I took a drink. And there was this cheering standing ovation, and it was so much fun. And then it got back to the board. And one of the slightly formal members said, yeah, I'm sure you had fun, but remember, you are representing the board of the American Institute of Architects. And then someone else who was there said, yes, but he was professional, they were having fun, and he said, and for the first time in years, AIS now thinks the AIA might be cool. Because we are certainly, and I'm using we, meaning the board, even though they kicked my sorry off. We have really been recognizing how cool all of you are. And there has been an awful lot of efforts with emerging professionals. We had the Emerging Professionals Town Square at the convention, and Jeff Potter and Mickey Jacob, 2 previous presidents, put a lot of effort that this is where the future of this industry is, and we have to pay attention to you. We've been going through this repositioning, which is an awkward thing of trying to take something so massive and inevitably so bureaucratic and make it more responsive and more focused on where we're going as opposed to where we comfortably are. And we cannot do that without you. So your dedication and your devotion to this organization, AIAS, must transition towards the American Institute of Architects. We need you. While on the board, we had, he was the mayor, I believe, of Charlottesville, and he had this great old phrase. Apparently it's an old Latin phrase. And he said, nothing about us without us is for us. That's profound. Nothing about us without us is for us. And you can apply it to anything that you are doing. You cannot do things without your clients. You cannot do things without your friends, without your families, without your communities, without those older than you and younger than you. My proudest moment on the board happened at the last board meeting, where we voted to give Julia Morgan the Golden Award. She is the first woman to receive it. And last year, they gave it to Tom Maine, and that was not my choice. But he was the bad boy, of course. And yet, here was a woman who fought against all odds and just kept putting her head down and working and creating beautiful work. And that was an amazing honor. Yeah, she died in 1957. And maybe we need to catch up. But I want you, please, to understand that we should never condemn the past. They make mistakes, but I can guarantee you that the future will look back at this time and will point out mistakes that we are making right now. And last night, or I think it was on Tuesday, Albina, where are you? Hi there. So she did a marvelous speech. She's a marvelous speaker. It was so full of heart. And she talked about why she loved this country. And she's from Albania. But see, what she has is she has perspective. And you, as architectural students, learn all about perspective, but you must understand that perspective comes from all different ways. So having the perspective of living in another country and coming here and recognizing all the gifts that we have. And you didn't pay for any of those gifts. They were here. And you're contributing to them. But any time that you get a gift and you didn't pay for it, you must be humble. And you must be thankful. I think the speeches by Mark LePage and Catherine Darmstadt were worth the price of admission. Those were amazing. And I loved that there was a question that, well, those two were kind of, kind of an entrepreneur and then an architect, and those are kind of, no. And please understand, every single person in here must be an entrepreneur. You must undertake new things. Because there's this screwy system that has resulted in making sure that educators and administrators are fully employed and providing you with massive debt. And it's absurd. And so there has to be new solutions and new ideas and entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurism is simply the notion of that we can do things and we can do new things. You don't have a choice. I hear, when I'm participating in educational, architectural education conferences, and quite often the educators are talking about how we really want all of our students to be out there and learning to do good and being involved in social good, and that's great. But you must also learn to do well. The creation of wealth. And please understand that wealth is not just the dollars and cents. Wealth is anything that has value. And we need more of anything that has value. There was one of the speakers, and I don't remember who it was, I think it was one of the panelists, who said that the entrepreneurial mindset is not about seizing opportunities, it's about the ability to see opportunities. And it means, like, with that perspective, that you can see things that others aren't. And you have some of the most marvelous training. You are better prepared because of the ability to see perspective. You are better prepared to see opportunities than almost any other occupation. But I also want you to understand, I'm not a fan of the phrase, make no small plans. It is arrogant. One of the great things about this country is that here, small ideas are as important as big ideas. And if you have a small idea, embrace it, think it through, run with it, build upon it. Because small ideas can become bigger, but sometimes small ideas are marvelous and beautiful and wonderful because they stay small. And they stay personal, and they are things in your hearts and things for your soul. Here's another idea. We're getting really, really good at skills identification, figuring out what are the components within all your skill sets. And what we also need to do then is identify skill gaps. And if there's one term that is constantly applied to your generation, it is, we are collaborative. But quite often it's treated as if it was a noun. And it needs to be a verb, a passionate, active verb.
because that's how collaboration is going to work, by identifying where gaps are and then how you work together to find these bigger and better solutions. You have this pretty cool opportunity. My friend Matt Barstow yesterday was telling each of the quads that the decisions that you are making about who you are voting for may be some of the most important in decades. And here's one of the reasons why. We may be in the early stages of a 21st century renaissance, a complete rethinking of how we work, how we live, how we play, how we invent. And you get to be the ones at the center of that act of creation. You should be in awe of that. But don't be afraid of failure. We've become so frightened of failure because we've become so comfortable in our affluence. And you need to fail, small and soon, rather than too big and too late. And when things get too big, we become very fearful because it is so big. And we can't imagine something so big could fail. There was a platitude that got sent around by some of the architectural firms about that the only way to go beyond the possible is to have this vision of the impossible, and on and on and on. And I said, no, really, an awful lot of innovation happens because somebody says, here, hold my beer and watch this. Sometimes you don't have to think about it. Sometimes you just have to act. Band-aids are for the brave. You've got to take chances. You've got to be willing to risk falling down in order to rise up. I have a great fear about the future of architecture. That the future of architecture will be boring. And you may have heard me quote this before. There's a filmmaker here in the city of Chicago by the name of Melissa Pierce, and she had this tweet. She said, so many buildings look cold and unromantic, boxy without curves, and starting to believe the architects had mothers that never loved them. And we did this, the board met in Chicago last year, and we did a boat tour, of course, and we're going past the Aqua. And as we're going past, all of a sudden the tour guide, she remembers that a third of the boat were architects. And she goes, hey, architects! Just my little 7-year-old said she's going to run away and go live there. She goes, that's great architecture if a little girl would leave her mother for it. And I want you, at some point in your career, to design a building that would want a little child of any age to run away to it. But I see so many buildings today that look like nothing more than technical drawings. There is no passion. One of the little sort of rallying cry jokes that I had with the board was less HSW, more poetry. And we were increasing the number of HSWs, health, safety, welfare credits. And I said, look, all this is doing is making sure you're competent but boring. And architects have less excuse for being boring than any other occupation. And I get the fact that we have to have the technical side. Buildings have to stand. But we also have to be able to look up to the things, the creations that you make, and be in awe. And we are not going to be in awe of boxes. Something more has to be brought into it. There has to be evidence that it was a real architect, a real man or woman who was behind that design and put blood, sweat, passion, and love into it. There will be apps for the technical, but not for the poetic, not for the romantic, and not for the beautiful. In a word, I want you to think more like pirates. Okay? And Nick Dukas. I understand that the word pirate actually comes from a Greek word that means to put to the test. And see, here's the thing. We are getting really, really good at innovation. But we are organizing it, and we are basically laying it out so it runs down the aisles where everything is clear. But I've been reading a couple books, one called The Pirate's Dilemma, the other one's called The Pirate Organization. And the Pirate Organization is subtitled Lessons from the Fringes of Capitalism. And it's all about the pirates are really not so much outlaws as they are at the edge of the law trying to figure out what works right now. And that's what you, with an entrepreneurial mindset, have to figure out what works right now. Because the jobs may not be there. The traditional jobs may not be there. You need to take this occupation where it needs to be. Someone asked Catherine a question about, does she really think of herself as an architect because she's doing some of these other things? And she very clearly, very definitively said, no, I am an architect. And I have heard that from an awful lot of people who are having an impact, and quite often, she's licensed, but a lot of these people, like Cameron Sinclair, is having this huge impact, and he's not even licensed. To which I said to some people within CARB, just give him the damn license, okay? He's already created an organization as big as the American Institute of Architects, and he's having a huge impact, and you're being fussy. There was a Tumblr list. Maya Small is an architect out of Providence. She's a marvelous educator, and she also created this Tumblr list of architects and other things. And it's all these people who have trained as architects and then have gone and done other things. Because the mindset that they have been able to create and forge allows them to do so much more. But according to our traditional organizations, they don't exist. Because in some ways, they might be a threat. And you'd be surprised when I speak at architectural schools. And by the way, now that I'm off the board, I can actually encourage you to invite me to come speak to your schools. I've had people come up to me and go, I don't want to be an architect. But nobody understands that. And one woman at UNC Charlotte, she says, I love buildings. I want to write about buildings, and nobody understands that. Then that's wrong. Then that's wrong. We need to understand that the training you have goes far beyond that boundary. And as you already intuitively understand, the boundaries of design occupations, they're artificial. They may be necessary, but they will be shifting, and they will be expanding. And what it means to call yourself an architect in the future, your now, is going to be changing. So I want you, here's your assignment. That's how we're going to close. Your assignment is to go out there, go back home, go back to school, go out into your communities, into the workplace, but bring a bit of rebellion with you. You have to rebel for good things, for the permanent things, for the things worth fighting over. It will not be easy, but it will be necessary, and therefore it is possible. Your job, ladies and gentlemen, is to put more R into architect. Thank you.
Oh, I was slow.